Welcome. I want to begin by thanking everyone who participated in our last show called Mahler Turns 160, especially Aaron Cohen, Evelyn Nichols, and the Mahler Stichting Nederland, Thomas Hampson, Jerzy Stilic, in that very house where Mahler was born 160 years ago, and so many of you who joined us from all around the world to toast the master on his birthday. Before we get into the program, let me just remind you that we would also like to hear from you. So feel free to text us any questions you might have on whatever platform you're on right now, and I'll try to get to them during the show or right at the end if possible. Also, Mahler Hour is brought to you by Mahler Foundation. So if you want to support us and our activities, please become a member. Just go to the website and mahlerfoundation.org, and you can find all the details you'll need there. All right, on to the show coming up today. We've called this installment of the Mahler Hour on September 1st, the first of our monthly live streams. But in fact, there are many firsts today. We will be interviewing Finnegan Downey Deer, this year's first place winner of the Gustav Mahler conducting competition. We'll have a presentation by Peter Revers, of the president of the First Mahler Society, the International Gustav Mahler Society based in Vienna, Austria, the next in our series of Mahler Society profiles. We'll have an interview with Jason Starr, documentary filmmaker specializing in Mahler, who's just releasing a new film on Mahler's First Symphony, and a sneak preview in an event coming up in November that might well be your first opportunity to participate in the performance of Mahler. All this and more in the coming hour. All right, so to go to our first guest, I'd like to invite Marina Mahler to join us and introduce our first guest and the Bamberg International Gustav Mahler conducting competition. Marina?
Hi, Morten, thank you. Since 2004, our first year of the competition, created together with Ernest Fleischmann and Paul Müller, when Gustav Mahler won our first prize and broke onto the world stage, we have each 3 years had our Bamberg Mahler competition with the generosity of the Bamberger Symphoniker and the hard work and dedication of its directors. This year, in spite of the overwhelming coronavirus and in the face of daunting odds, our Mahler competition took place in end June, beginning July. Our first prize winner, Finnegan Downey Deer, performed Mahler 4 with the wonderful Barbara Hannigan singing. It was incredibly moving, and we were moved to tears and grateful to be there, assisting this wonderful coming together of Mahler 4 and the creation of a new piece by Miroslav Srnka, commissioned by us. It made us all very happy. The piece is called Memoryful. Our chairman of Mahler Foundation on the jury, Martin Campbell-White, was physically present and I was virtually present. And it was an impressive occasion. The bravery of those who were determined to be there and the beauty of the young people competing. The wonder of Finnegan's truly giving and selfless performance reminded us all what music is and can be. And so I present him to you now, and with just the comment that his comment to me and to us that the studying of the Webern piece seemed to open doors to all the other pieces performed. Lots of love, Finnegan. Here you are.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh my goodness, it's me. Sorry. It's so nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me, everyone. It's really so funny. It feels like quite a long time ago in some ways, and yet like actually just the memory of what it actually was like for that sort of seemingly I mean, the piece is obviously longer than 5 seconds, but for those 5 seconds, just the world seeming to momentarily align. It was an incredibly special and unforgettable thing.
So well, congratulations, Finn. It's of course a wonderful privilege to have you here joining us today. And I first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, we know a little bit about you, but we'd like to know a little bit more. If you could just tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and what you're doing.
So I grew up in London. I studied music at Cambridge University, and then I went on to the Royal Academy of Music, where I studied piano. But from a very relatively early age, I always loved playing with singers in particular, and more even than playing with singers, I always loved making music with other people. So I played a lot of piano music, obviously, but I always liked performing and particularly rehearsing with other people. And I sort of was, when I went to the academy, I studied piano, but I specialized in ensemble piano. And so I did a lot of piano accompaniment with singers, some Liedbegleitung, and some chamber music. And the conducting thing sort of happened because, but the other side of my sort of personality, I suppose, is the theatre. And both my parents are working in the theatre. And I've always loved the mechanism and the madness of it, and the sort of the just complete insanity of what's going on. And opera was a sort of natural ending point, just because there are so many things that have to come together to make something that's even half decent. So I mean, I started playing in the opera. I was very lucky in that I played to their previous Studienleiter in Covent Garden. And I started playing there, and from Covent Garden, I went to the Salzburg Festspiele, and then around Europe with particularly Simone Young and also Thomas Ades. And I was sort of working my way up, doing this mixture of contemporary music, lots of vocal music, lots of opera. And I think the thing that really appealed to me about this competition was that, I mean, I've loved Mahler for a very, very, very long time, but also the mixture of Mahler and the contemporary music, Nachenmann and Webern and Senka, basically felt like someone had decided they were going to put all my sort of favorite musical tastes in a box and send it to me. So I was like, well, if not this, then I should probably have a go. And here we are, I suppose. That's the potted history. I hope that'll do.
So, so was it a long considered decision, or was this something that was more spontaneous, applying for this and saying, you know, I've got to get there, we're in the middle of COVID? Was that a consideration as well?
Not at all, really. Genuinely, a friend of mine, a wonderful conductor and composer called Richard Baker, who gave me my first job in London, he basically sent me an email saying, have you seen this? Might be up your street. And I never thought that I would be the idea of me winning a conducting competition is just so inherently sort of ridiculous that it doesn't really make any sense. But purely because, like, I thought, you know, why not? Might be good. Might be a good time. And also, of course, like, the most important thing is the orchestra are amazing. And it was actually, I've obviously known Jonathan Nott's recordings of the symphony.
So we have some photos here of you with the orchestra. Tell us a little bit about what that was like.
That's probably me saying, please play quieter, through a pretty unambiguous sort of physical manifestation of that. But the thing is, it's such a weird thing. And obviously in conductor interviews, all these cliches come out about, like, oh, the orchestra was so responsive, or you know, it just clicked, or blah, blah, blah. But with them, there was something about it where even from the first moment, there were a couple of really key people who, for whatever reason, and it's much, you know, it's this is the thing, and that I'll sort of say ad nauseum, but with this whole experience, I got, for some reason, for me on this day in this mad year, like, it did all come together. And for some reason, the leader, this wonderful violinist called Bart, I don't know why, but just from moment one, it felt like we got on with each other, and that made negotiating. And the same with the solo cellos, solo violas, wonderful second violins, wonderful principal double bass. But even I cannot explain why, but from moment one, it felt like I had allies in the orchestra. And as soon as you have a few people who, you know, are going to take responsibility for the sound and the playing, you sort of feel like, okay, now we can start cooking. Do you know what I mean? And I really didn't, I was just trying to be part of their sound and to be part of their tradition of playing this, you know, amazing music. And obviously with my own viewpoint, but to really try and, you know, ride the horse, I suppose.
What, you know, I don't know if the audience members are clear about how this happens, but this orchestra, the Bamberg Symphony Orchestra, plays the same repertoire for a lot of conductors over the course of this week. It's the same music over and over and over again, which takes an incredible dedication on behalf of the orchestra and the organizers. But every conductor, of course, is being judged. It's a competition. So what is it that you do to bring in your personality, or what is it that makes this orchestra respond differently? I mean, I guess that's a $10 million question, but in other words, was there something you were thinking about that somehow you felt you needed to impose your mark on this, or did it just simply flow from that chemistry that you just talked about?
Yeah, that's a really good question. To be honest, I would hope that I never impose. Imposing is not what I do. And I think once you impose, you sort of you're entering into a dialogue whereby, of course, like I remember Barenboim saying, it's not an orchestral, when you're conducting, like, it's not a democracy, it can't be a democracy. But the idea of like imposition of an idea is something that I of course, like you have to have ideas about what you want, but like, it's funny, like that no doubt that the orchestras on some level they know the music. They've done the music far many more times than I've done it, that's for sure. I think it's an absolute tribute to them, and I know this from friends of mine who watch the live stream, and particularly, I must say, people who watch the live stream who aren't musicians, who aren't trained musicians, for whom the whole experience, and I have to take my hats off to the competition and to Marina and everyone, because it gave people a peek behind the wizard's curtain, sozusagen. Like it gave people who were completely new to the whole concept of what conductors do, like an insight which they simply would never have had. And that, I have to say, like, there's this word that does the rounds about the accessibility of music, or whatever it is. Like I've always said, like, for example, there are bits in that piece where if you give people enough keys into hearing, you know, the end of the third movement, or like, you know, the Kein Musik ist ja in the fourth movement, or any of these bits, like give them the tools to respond to it once and see if they like it. And if they like it, amazing. Like the whole idea that the orchestra responded so like seriously to 12 different people doing the same repertoire is like the biggest tribute to that orchestra. And to them really trying to play what people were doing. And of course, I'm sure they liked some people more than others. Like I was very fortunate, and it felt like they liked, I mean, no doubt with exceptions, but they liked me. But I like the whole exercise of them actually responding, as you say, to the same piece over and over again, and having the like seriousness of purpose to really try and play what people were doing is, I take my hats off to them, because it's fabulous.
You know, in that first photo that we saw, they've expanded the entire stage for the orchestras to sit at a proper distance from one another. There were only a few people out in the auditorium for those who could see that. But the irony of this is that when this was being broadcast through the live stream, the accessibility was many times that of what would have been the case had people attended the concert, or certainly in case of the rehearsals, and as you say, throwing back the curtain. So for all of the disadvantages of the COVID situation, this technology, as it has with Mahler Foundation and the Mahler Hour, has really brought a worldwide audience to something that otherwise would be far more limited. So it's your situation. You and I talked a little while ago about, you know, it's unfortunate that there wasn't a big crowd, but in a way, your performance in your competition really reached out to an enormous number of people. So
I think there's a lot of truth in that, and also I feel like it's the responsibility of people who really care about music now to think about what. Of course, like the COVID situation is absolutely hideous, and I would never try and undersell that. But I do also think, and also with my company in London, which is called Shadwell Opera, where we try and do contemporary works, and we try to think about bringing new audiences to the music that we love. We've really tried to think, how can we respond positively to this crisis, and what is the most positive way we can bring the sort of the music and the performances and the art that we love to more and new and different people to ever before. And the two things I did some Zoom concerts with my girlfriend, who's a wonderful singer, called Sundays at 6, which was a similar thing. And she we had people from all over the world. We had people from Mexico reading poems, and then we do Manuel de Fire songs, and we had this whole really making a virtue of the interface and of the a virtue of the necessity of using computers and Zoom and stuff. And the same thing with the competition. It was just it was a real light bulb moment that actually people watching an orchestra can respond to a conductor. People who have no idea about what it actually was, they found it completely fascinating. And like as a whole exercise in psychology, and also you give people like who aren't used to, for example, Webern or Lachenmann, you give them a key into the music where you say, this is what this means to me. And it's not about dictating or imposing, this is what it's about. But for me in this moment, in this second, with this orchestra in this mad world, this is what it means to me. And for some people who aren't used to the sort of the whole process of listening to a piece, just giving them a key in something lets them sort of feel their way in. And so suddenly, like a piece of Lachenmann, but you know, I had people from who had never mind Mahler, like never heard sort of any classical music at all, being like, who is it? Helmut Lachenmann? Because it's great. And you think like, yeah, that's what you want. That's what you want. And of course, like, why wouldn't they be like that? But at the same time, just the way that it was set up, really, people really had a way in, which I genuinely think they would not have had. So I absolutely take my hat off to the competition, organisers and everyone. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, an unbelievable logistical task that they accomplished. But moving this forward in this very crisis situation, as you say, using technology, I think is, and for your company, Opera Company, we'll be sure to get a link up perhaps on our webpage to bring attention to that. And using that probably in future as well, you probably have had to cancel productions or maybe to rethink them entirely.
But the thing is, like, the competition has given me a sort of a level of security, which is a blessing. And I mean that not so much in terms of money, but in terms of like knowing that because the competition is, I mean, all of the wonderful past winners of it, it's sort of who I would never compare myself to, but at the same time, it's given me like an amount of credence as a musician, which I otherwise wouldn't have had. And I think I'm the same musician as I was before I did it, and I think I'm the same musician now. But to have that at all is really I do not take that lightly. One thing I would like to say before I start rabbiting on is that I want to say thank you to Stefan Schütz, who organised the competition.
Yes.
Because Stefan Schütz, he is absolutely, and people talk about unsung heroes, but he is one. And he, in terms of and I know because I've played a lot of competitions, I've been involved in lots, but in terms of people, that competition could not have been better organised. And every single communication was personal and on the phone, and there was no, and genuinely, like, he made me feel like I could turn up, have a good time and do my best, and anything else didn't matter. And so I'd really like to take this opportunity to thank Stefan personally and publicly, because he's a wonderful man and he really put me in the best position I possibly could have been in. And he made me want to do it when I wasn't sure that I actually did. So thank you, Stefan.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Stefan. And Markus Axt, of course. I wanted to ask you one final question, because we do have to go, but we haven't talked too much about Mahler. What does Mahler mean to you, Finn? And not just this experience, but the Mahler, the composer, the man, the icon, whatever aspect of this you might want to reflect on.
I think I can't remember exactly who said it, but I've watched it in one of the Mahler films, but someone useful said the thing with Mahler is that simultaneously, you know that the music is bigger than you personally could ever be, and yet at the same time, it can't exist without you. Mm-hmm. And there's something about the fact that, like, you're sort of confronted with the enormity of, like, the end, and even the thing is, even the enormity in the tiny things, like that "Oh kleine Dinge," like in the Wolf song, like just the enormity of the end of Mahler 4, which is so, even though it sort of goes off into the distance, and that's that. But also, you know that, for example, what I found in that week was that even though there were my reactions to it, it can't exist without my reactions to it. It's bigger than my reactions to it will ever be. And yet at the same time, it cannot be there without that sort of highly personal response to it. And I think, like, there is, you know, it's pointless comparing Mahler to Beethoven or anything else, but I think like that idea of music being there and being something that binds us all together and being bigger than us, but also being something that belongs to us is sort of inherently what makes us human, really. And so Mahler Forum, particularly for me, that is a very, very rare example of that, I suppose.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Finn, and congratulations once again. It was wonderful having you on our live stream. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So we turn next to the International Gustav Mahler Society that has a long and illustrious history. I've invited the president of the International Gustav Mahler Society, Professor Dr. Peter Revers, to join us today in a discussion of the society, its current activities, its history. Welcome, Peter. You have to unmute. You have to unmute, Peter.
Okay, now it works.
Yes.
Yeah, welcome, Morten, and welcome all of you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, I wanted just to ask you, first of all, tell us a little bit about the society and when it was founded, by whom, and take us through a little bit of the history, perhaps, of the organization.
Yeah, as you all might know, it's the oldest Mahler Society we have. It started actually 11th of November 1955, and I think it's important to say that this was a very difficult time of several reasons. It was the aftermath of the Nazi period. It was 10 years after the Holocaust, and only a few musicians believed at that time that Mahler plays any important role in music. Only a few works were performed that time, and the Mahler boom, as you know, started from the 1960s and especially the 1970s. I think a very important role played the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. One has to say that the role of the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra during the Nazi period is, as you know, ambivalent, but they played the First Symphony of Mahler a few weeks after the end of the war, 3rd of June 1945. And they did a lot for Mahler in the future time. They asked in 1954 Bruno Walter, they wrote a letter to Bruno Walter asking him if he would be willing to take the office of president of the new founded, but a little bit later, new founded Mahler Society. And Bruno Walter willingly accepted. Alma had a lot of resistance that time because of the role of Austria, of the Vienna Philharmonica in the Nazi time, of still anti-Semitic tendencies in Austria. But finally, she accepted, and the Vienna Philharmonic underlined very much the need for a society. Now, 11th of November, as I said, it was the birth hour of the Mahler Society, which took place in the conference hall of the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. And if we see the first slide, we see here Erwin Ratz, who was the elected president, Bruno Walter, honorary president, and Alma as honorary member. Next slide. That is are the members during that constituent General Assembly. And you see here the second line, for instance, Frau Alban Berg. You know, it's Helene Berg, the widow of Alban Berg. I find it quite nice that she writes Frau Alban Berg, yeah. And you see a lot of people you see here, a little bit below Emanuela Krenek, you see yeah, different prominent people from that time. And I think it's quite interesting who took part during that time. The promote the statutes in the early times had, I would say, 6 different aspects to maintain: promoting performances, academic work, lectures, setting up an archive, which is one of the most important issues in the development of the societies, setting up a library, preparing a complete critical edition, produce a series of publications, and maintain the memorials. It's, I think, quite interesting that most of these issues didn't change until recent time. It was, as I said, very difficult times, especially financially. And one, I would say, the good spirit of the Mahler Society for decades, Emmy Hauswirth, worked until her death in 2000 without any payment for the society. And I think it is this idealism who helped the society a lot. And even for the president, Erwin Ratz, it was a really challenging time. He wrote a letter to the composer Egon Welles in October 1956, and it's really, really despairing. He must be in a despairing situation. He wrote, "My life is destroyed, and I have only one wish: to resign as soon as possible. The president is indeed the maid of all work. But where am I to find someone who will do the work?" Yeah, I think that's quite gives quite a good impression how difficult the things were at that time. It changed, as we know. In the centenary year 1960, the Seventh Symphony appeared, also with some difficulties. The publisher was Bothe and Bock, Berlin, and it was combined with many restrictions. For instance, could Erwin Ratz only give a few, very few critical commentaries, although there were more than 500 mistakes in the first edition of the Seventh Symphony. So it was because the publisher thought, we don't make any business with Gustav Mahler and we can afford so much money. Now, Ratz was a very important figure. He also was the head of the critical edition. He was not a trained philologist, we must say. His aspect of editing was quite different from today, but I will say a few words later to that. Ratz then died in 1973, was succeeded by Gottfried von Einem, the famous composer who was president also for 18 years. You see here Gottfried von Einem. Under his presidency, some important events took place. The first one is the first issue of the news about Mahler research in 1975 and 1976, sorry, which is, as you know, until now our most important periodical, and not only for us, but for Mahler research in general. And the Society was also organizer of the first international Gustav Mahler colloquium in Vienna in 1979. And what is also very important is that during this time, especially in the 1980s, Hertha Blaukopf played a very important role. She edited the letters of Gustav Mahler. She edited the unknown letters, and she edited the letters to Richard Strauss. So I would say columns for today's Mahler research. Then in 1991, von Einem handed the presidency to Rainer Bischoff. He was also composer. He was Secretary General of the Vienna Symphonic Orchestra. The critical edition was taken over by Karl-Heinz Füssel. We'll see him also a little bit later. And I must say that during that time also a lot of editions were taking place. We see also, as you see, Einem was quite a long time, for 18 years, president of the Mahler Society. Also, Rainer Bischoff, he resigned in 2015, so he was 14 years president of the Mahler Society. And I must say, under the presidency of Rainer Bischoff, important editions were printed, like the 15 songs, Humoreske and ballads from Des Knaben Wunderhorn, edited by Renate Stark-Voigt, appeared in 1993. And then also the electronic era started in the society, beginning with a data process documentary of the contents of the library and the archives, as well as new construction of the homepage. And one of the main events during the period of Rainer Bischoff was the first performance of the three-movement original version of Das Klagende Lied in Manchester, 1997, based on the critical edition by Reinhold Kubik, which appeared in print 1 year later, 1998.
Hey,
Yeah?
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're almost out of time. If you could get through the material, I have to be fair to everyone I'm talking to. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can we?
I can do that quickly, yeah? Okay, let's continue. You see here Christian Meyer, who was president from 2015 to 2019. The heads of the critical edition, you see here Karl-Heinz Füssel, I already mentioned. He succeeded Erwin Ratz. Reinhold Kubik, he was a trained philologist. He studied musicology in Tübingen and had a lot of experience in editing music through the Bach edition in Tübingen and the Schubert edition in Tübingen. After he resigned, Stephen Heffling and Renate Stark-Voigt took over the critical edition. And as you might all know, just recently the edition of the Titan received the Best Edition Award during the Frankfurt Music Fair in last year. So it was really a very great event. You see here Hertha and Kurt Blaukopf. Hertha Blaukopf really was for many, many years, I would say, perhaps the most important person in the everyday life of Mahler Society. And Kurt Blaukopf, who wrote in 1969 a very, very important book on Gustav Mahler and der Zeitgenosse der Zukunft. But the society had also to keep the Komponierer huts in mind. You see here Steinbach am Attersee. You know, it was more or less a toilet at the campsite, and it was very difficult to remove it and to do a kind of museum. And here are Marina, Julia, and Thomas and Morten in the inside of this hut. Then the composing hut in Meyernick, and finally the next one in Toblach, where Mahler composed the Lied von der Erde, 9th Symphony and 10th Symphony. I think that is
I think we should also add that there are exhibits in all of those composing huts that are that have been put together by the International Gustav Mahler Society. Those locations are all owned by different people, but we're doing our best to curate them as monuments to Mahler's memory.
And it was a really, I remember in the 1980s for Steinbach, it was really very difficult task to create the composing hut in Steinbach to that state, the present state, yeah.
Okay, I wanted just to say that, just one last word, Peter, on what we're doing in the future and what the Mahler Society is thinking of tackling in the next years ahead. And of course, we must mention the archive that you talked about earlier is available to the public. You can come and use the archive. What else is the Mahler Society doing in just about in 10 seconds?
I think we are doing a project Mahler Online, which is first of all a totally new construction of the homepage, and giving much more access to the sources we have. And we are working on a list of his compositions, a Werkverzeichnis, a critical Werkverzeichnis, so that really it's a shame that until now there exists no Mahler list of composition and list of all sources for the compositions especially. And then we have, of course, a new critical edition with a lot of events coming out in a few months, the Fourth Symphony, and then afterwards the Song of the Earth, and then we continue. Yeah. So that will be the next projects of our society. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. And we salute all of the work that the society is doing, especially the scholarly work on the critical edition, which is so important to Mahler around the world. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we move next now to another first, this time the First Symphony. Our guest now is Jason Starr, who will tell us about his latest film, Mahler's Titan, The Romance, Death, and Triumph of a Young Musician. Hi, Jason.
Hey there, Morten and Mahler World. So good to be with everybody. Morten, you know, it's too broad a subject to narrow me down. What would you like me to talk about?
Well, first of all, I didn't quite finish the introduction. I should have said everyone in the Mahler world hopefully knows Jason's films already. He's made films on the First Symphony, the Second Symphony, the Third Symphony, Das Lied von der Erde, and also Lieder eines fahrenden Gesellen. If you haven't seen a Jason Starr film, it's time you do so as a Mahler aficionado, and even if you don't know Mahler very well. These are truly spectacular introductions and I would say dive-ins into these incredible works. So you're right, it's a huge topic, Jason, and I'm going to have you on another time where we have even more time, hopefully. But let's talk about just a little bit about your trade and how you came to do a project on the First Symphony. It's part of a series of works that you've been doing on Mahler.
Right, I've just been, well, just to step back for a second, the very first film we did on Mahler was on the Third Symphony. And that was just an accident of fate, in that Manhattan School of Music asked me to film a performance of the Third Symphony. And having worked for years for Live from Lincoln Center and my own PBS series Backstage Lincoln Center, getting the rights to a performance was one of the biggest hurdles in doing a documentary. So I said, I'll do this for free if I can have the rights to the performance. And what a great symphony to begin with, since it is probably the most overtly programmatic, spiritual from the first note to the end. And it's always fascinated me, Mahler's ability to inject so much meaning, spiritual, philosophical, cultural, into his works to make them so incredibly rich. So that was a good place to start.
So how do you turn music into a film? Someone once famously said, talking about music is like dancing to architecture. How are you going to render this filmically? I mean, you do a magnificent job, but there must be some incredible challenges to this.
Well, yeah, and probably the biggest challenge is assessing who really is the audience for these kind of films. So the first one, I was thinking of a much broader audience, people who may not be familiar with Mahler's music, but especially the idea that music can be about something, that it could convey ideas, convey meaning. And what I found so unique about Mahler's music and so inspirational in terms of making films is Mahler's ability to work with the audience in the creation of the meaning. So the meaning isn't done when he puts down the pen or even when he puts down the baton, but actually continues evolving in the minds and hearts of the people who have heard it. So that phenomenon I just found so compelling. So each of his symphonies tells a different story, not to be literal, I don't mean story like a narrative, but takes us to a different place. But of course, they're all related in many, many ways. So after doing the one on the third, I was lucky enough to get funding for a few more, and we did on one on the Second Symphony. It was a great pleasure working with Thomas Hampson. Hi there, Tom. In bringing his singing of the Fischpredigt into the film. And you were basically asking, well, how to go about that. So that's one element. So performance is an element. We filmed orchestras perform these works specifically for our documentary so that I can direct it in such a way where I could highlight moments that I know will be important in the documentary. There are interviews up until recently, of course, with Henri Louis de Lagrange, Donald Mitchell. I see Stephen Heffling is with us, and Marilyn McCoy, and Sibylle Werner in the more recent films. And of course, Morten has been a mainstay. And forgive me if I'm leaving anybody out. I'm just going by the pictures I see on the screen now. And Marina, who just sat down.
Exactly. Marina
Yes.
was has been on the film as well.
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit about the First Symphony. Well, I don't know if anyone sees that, you can't possibly not want to see it. In my opinion, it's so seductive and asks all of the big questions. And of course, that's one of the things that makes your films so enticing, but also I think challenging, right? I mean, these aren't small questions we're talking about here, and you have some time to navigate around them and to bring them to your audiences. Were there any particular challenges with the First Symphony? Anything particularly about that? I know that you had to make another film, in fact, almost to flesh out what you wanted to say. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, initially I was going to incorporate Lieder eines fahrenden Gesellen into the film because they're so intimately related. But as this project grew, I saw that they needed to be their own films. So On Mahler's Songs of a Wayfarer is a film about, it's the prequel to Mahler's Titan, The Romance, Death, and Triumph of a Young Musician. And it's where we come to see some of the origins of Mahler's approach to composition, which so dramatically reflect his emotional life. And Thomas Hampson sings magnificently in this performance that weaves in and out. And I'm very interested in getting to what Mahler says about these works, either literally in the music through texts, these are his own poems, for example, and of course through his letters and other commentary that maybe Natalie Bauer-Lechner provides for us. So, so that ended up being its own film, albeit a shorter 30-minute film. Mahler's Titan, boy, where to begin with such a rich, seminal work, which I think to this day is probably the most performed of Mahler's symphonies. In a sense, you know, I didn't know whether to call it Titan because the Symphony No. 1 is not Titan. The symphonic poem that preceded it, with most of the music that we know in Symphony No. 1, was Titan for 3 performances, or actually 2 performances of the first 3, I think. And what we do in the film is trace the program that Mahler wrote for the symphony, including the later deleted Blumina movement, which actually turns out to be critical in the understanding of the program. Now, I get that a lot of people fixate on Mahler's protestation against program music, you know, down with programs, but that was many years later. And of course, Mahler's sense of what program music should be is very different from the kind of program music we've come to know through the works of Richard Strauss and Franz Liszt and Sasson and others. And so I wanted to explore that, explore the ideas that are so important to this. And key to this, and I thank Sibylla Verna for helping me find this document, and for Morten for helping me decode this document, which was in German. The article that was published before the premiere in the German-speaking paper in Budapest, the Pesterloid. And this article, which really looks like it was dictated by Mahler himself, lays out Mahler's approach to program music and to symphonic music in general, and was a great inspiration in the creation of this film. To say more about it would be like, why not just see the film?
Exactly. So I 2 more big topics, so we've got to move along here. The first one is, what's your next Mahler project?
Yeah, I should be so lucky to get to do another one, especially in this world that will hopefully emerge from the pandemic. I'd love to do Mahler 8. And I'd like to do Mahler 8 for several reasons. One, he had this lifelong love of the poetry of Wolfgang von Goethe. And like Das Lied von der Erde, the text calls out for interpretation. What is Mahler doing with this text? That would be a lot of fun. And thirdly, you know, for some reason, there are some Mahler lovers that dismiss the 8th Symphony as being less great, less important, I don't know, just less than the other works of the canon, which I personally think is ridiculous. I think it's a colossal masterpiece and would like to explore it as such.
Okay, great. One final issue, and this is a big one. How can we see your films? Tell us a little bit about acquiring them, viewing them, ordering them, maybe streaming possibilities.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. The all of the films are available on DVD And the film on the Mahler's Titan and Songs of a Wayfarer are on a single DVD that is just being released today. So you can go to our website, culturalmedia.net, and go to the films page, and you'll find Mahler's Titan. Go to that, and you could click on the buy DVD link, and that'll take you to the publisher. And this is a coincidence, but there's a summer sale going on until September 9th. And they're offering $10 off on this DVD. So now's a good time to get that, should you be interested. They also are the publisher for all of the other Mahler films and then some that we've created. But we're starting our own streaming service as well. And we got our very first film up there. It's of Love, Death, and Beyond, exploring Mahler's Resurrection Symphony. And same thing, go to culturalmedia.net, films page, select that film, and you can stream it right now. You don't have to wait for the DVD to be sent to you. And we'll be getting the other films, the older previous films, up there probably in the coming week or two. So culturalmedia.net, films page.
Great. All right. Well, I am very, very grateful for the chance to talk. Jason, you have much more to share, I know, but we'll have to cut it off there and hopefully have you back sometime soon. Thank you very, very much, Jason.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right. Well, we are quickly running out of time, but I want to follow up on the promise to involve all of you in a Mahler performance, those of you who sing anyway, even if you're not professional. This is an exciting opportunity being offered to us by the Self-Isolation Choir, Orchestra for the Earth, and Gustav Mahler himself, so to speak. I want to invite Mark Strachan to join us, the founder of the Self-Isolation Choir, to tell us more. Mark?
Hello, Morten. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, indeed.
Good. The technology is working. Marvelous. Hello, everybody. It's great to be in your company. Thank you very much for having me. I need to start by saying I am a mere average choral singer. And in your amazing company, I feel very small and tiny because I literally am an average singer in choral choirs in Dorset here in the UK. But when the lockdown of the virus occurred, I felt that we should continue with our singing, but use as much modern technology as we possibly could. So we decided to put together Messiah with an online choir and a Baroque orchestra led by Lawrence Cummings. So we put together the whole of Messiah with a choir which grew to 3,600 singers from all over the world, from the UK, from America, from Canada, from Australia, from Singapore, Malaysia, everywhere. And on the 31st of May, we performed the complete Messiah. And bearing in mind, every singer and every instrumentalist was recorded in isolation. None of us met at all. It was really quite an event. So many people were moved by this, Morten, and they were moved by the fact that although they were apart from their loved ones, they were united in the singing, that we decided to continue this. And we have since done Vivaldi's Gloria. We're about to start Elijah. We've done a John Rutter week. And because I am such a Mahler fan, I said to myself, well, for goodness sake, why can't we, as a global online choir, sing Mahler? So I got in touch with John Warner, who is this wonderful young conductor who many of you may know, who was introduced to me by Marina. Marina, thank you so much for that introduction. John is an incredibly talented young man who, with his Orchestra for the Earth, is helping us put together a complete performance of Mahler's Second Symphony, the final movement, with singers from all over the world at the selfisolationchoir.com. For me, as I say, an average choral singer, it's the most exciting thing I've ever done in my life. To think that we could have thousands of singers all over the world singing this monumental work with an orchestra that is recorded in isolation. It's just extraordinary. So we are asking the choir, Morten, to submit their own voice part from isolation at home to us by the 5th of October. We will then mix all of this in the studio with the orchestra for a live online performance of the final movement of Mahler's Second Symphony on the 14th of November at, I think it's 7:30 p.m. GMT, and we're really, really looking forward to it. We already have over 500 members of this choir, and we've only been up and running for several days. So it's all looking really good and really exciting.
It sounds like a wonderful project, Mark. Tell us a little bit about how to get involved, because I know that you're not left simply to your own devices. You will have sectional rehearsals with John to prepare the choral parts. You have to sign up on the webpage, etc. Tell us a little bit about how it works.
Okay, well, you go to the selfisolationchoir.com and make sure that you click on Mahler and not Bach or Mendelssohn or anyone else, which I think is quite easy to do. Then you join up, and then on the 14th of September, John will come live and he will stream to the sopranos separately, then the altos separately, then the tenors separately, and then the basses separately. So everybody has a live online rehearsal program, which, by the way, can be seen later, Morten. So if you happen to miss it, one of the beauties of the online system is that if you're walking the dog or if you're stuck in a traffic jam or whatever it may be, you can always use the link to look at it later. So you are given the separate materials, which are your part only, so that you can listen to your part and your part only time and time and time again, with a piano backing track, so that not only can you take part in the online rehearsals, but you can learn your part. Then you submit your part, and you submit that by wearing headphones, watching John on the screen, and then with your iPhone or a separate recording device, you sing, maybe with one cup of the headphones slightly off so you can hear your voice. But what's really, really important, of course, is that the phone or the recording device picks up only your voice and not the music. So you then submit the voice to us, Morten, either by email, because it's audio only. The trouble with video is that the files are so big. So you submit the audio either by email or to a Dropbox, and then we put them all together. And on the 14th of November, we will play to the world their own version of Mahler's Symphony final version, which I hope will feature the largest choir that has ever been put together for this. And just quickly to say to Jason, if he's still around, it was lovely to hear you, Jason. Thank you. We will do Mahler 8 as well, because I agree with you completely that it is one of the best, and the final choral part of that is just going to be a magical moment.
It sounds wonderful. Now there is membership involved here, right? To get your parts and for their training and so on, you pay an application fee to be involved, right? Just so that people are aware.
Yes. You pay £29.99 to become a member of the choir. There is no subscription fee. You just pay £29.99 and you become part of the choir, and you get all the materials, Morten, to help you. I just think I need to very briefly say that on the performance itself, we are asking people from all over the world who want to watch the performance that that there is a voluntary suggested ticket price of £5 per non-member to go directly to Mahler Foundation in form of a Just Giving or whatever charitable donation, so that we're hoping that in the process we can raise money for Mahler Foundation, as well as provide a tremendous entertainment for the choir.
Oh, that's very generous. Thank you, Mark. And we will post those links, and I guess you'll post them as well for those who would like to help the Mahler Foundation and participate and listen to this absolutely unique performance of the finale of the Resurrection Symphony.
Very kind of you. It's selfisolationchoir.com, and we are really, really excited by the whole project.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's wonderful having you on. All right. So I know that we're at the hour exactly. We only have one or two more points, so we're very, very close to being on time this week. And I would like to close with one little notice, a very important one. Yesterday was the 141st birthday of Alma Mahler, and to tell us a little bit about that, as well as a recent publication apropos to this, I would like to introduce you to Marilyn McCoy, who will do a little bit of honoring Alma. Hello, Marilyn.
Hello, Morten.
So tell us about Alma.
Well, there's an awful lot of things to say about Alma. And so I guess at some point, I did bring my champagne glass today to like toast her. We should have really sent out more notices for people to do that. So yes, yesterday was her 141st birthday. And so basically the book that I was involved in is called Arnold Schoenberg, that is, Schoenberg's Correspondence with Alma Mahler. And it actually came out a year ago, and it's Oxford University Press, and there is a link to purchasing it if you're interested on the Foundation webpage. And so, by the way, that's one of Schoenberg's many self-portraits. He loved to paint himself, especially his face and his burning eyes. And so this was painted in 1910, which is around the time when they knew each other. And so this is the first scholarly edition of the entire correspondence in English. And my co-author and co-translator is Elizabeth Keithley of the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And so this was quite an odyssey for us. We spent about 9 years or so translating, tracking down chronology. A lot of Alma's letters were not transcribed or not dated. That was probably the biggest job for us. I've gotten very good at reading Alma's handwriting in particular. And so just a couple of quick things. So of course, Alma had met Schoenberg in 1900, right around the time when she was studying with Zemlinsky and having an affair with Zemlinsky. And so, she was really kind of impressed by him. And then, in 1901, she met Mahler. In 1902, they were married. And so the very first letter that we have is from 1903, we think. And so I just was going to read it to you. It says, "Dear Mr. Schoenberg, it would be lovely if you would spend Wednesday evening with us. We expect you at 7:00 p.m. Do not forget to bring the score of Pelléas und Melisande with you. Please. Many warm greetings, Alma Maria Mahler." So early on, after Schoenberg and Mahler had met, roughly 1904, we believe, Schoenberg started to come over to the Mahlers and share his compositions with them. And we've heard later about stories when Schoenberg and Zemlinsky come over and, pontificate about music with Mahler, and Alma was there. So the correspondence began when Gustav died. He had actually been a big patron of Schoenberg and supporter. And so on his deathbed, or very close, he said, "Alma, please take care of Schoenberg. I can't think of anyone else who would." So Alma did just that. She raised money for Schoenberg. She was always, she founded the Mahler, a couple of Mahler grants that she gave to Schoenberg many, many years. She found lodging for Schoenberg. So she was very supportive, and I wanted to say a sort of a kind of a hello to Evelyn. It was in 1920 in the first Mahler Festival in Amsterdam that Alma and Schoenberg started to use the du form. That is, he stopped calling her sehr geehrte gnädige Frau, which is an incredibly honorific title, and they became friends. And so it's a really interesting correspondence for many reasons. They were both musicians. They both talked about some of Schoenberg's important works early on. There's some interesting exchanges, very personal. When Schoenberg remarried, Alma was the first person he told. There's sort of all kinds of charming things. Also, I spent a lot of time getting to know Anna, Marina's mother, and there is a letter where she is mentioned and about how charming she is, a charming little granddaughter. So it was really fun to kind of read about everyone from back then. So anyway, I recommend it to you. And I wanted to say one last thing, if Francisco still has it for you. Francisco, do you still have a monogram? Okay, many of you have seen this monogram on various CDs and books and things like that. And one thing that we discovered, and I don't want to argue about it today if you feel like arguing, is that actually people have always assumed that this was Gustav Mahler's stationery, because there are letters that it is used from 1910. Much of the Philharmonic, New York Philharmonic professional correspondence is on this. There's a letter or two in Europe that also, where he also uses this, but then Alma used it after he died. And so anyway, people have assumed, because this is an art, an Art Nouveau kind of Jugendstil monogram, that it was Gustav's. But there is a letter, and by the way, Henri de Lagrange noticed this, and he also pointed it out. He sort of says, so Gustav is writing to Schoenberg in January 1909 from New York. And he says, my wife will tell you all about our life here. I'm simply not geared to letter writing. You can see that I haven't even got any writing paper and must use my wife's. So this beautiful monogram is Alma's. And if you look at it long enough, you can see that it's an A and an M. And I remember when we figured this out, I said, oh, there's a lot of people in the Gustav Mahler world that might be upset to learn that. But actually it makes sense because Alma wrote many more letters. So that's just one of the fun things to learn about our book. Again, Schoenberg's correspondence with Alma Mahler in English, and from Oxford University Press. And again, you can find a link to it on the Mahler Foundation webpage. Thanks, Morten. And we can toast Alma now if we want to. Have put up your momentary imaginary champagne or whatever.
So here's to Alma. Thank you very much, Marilyn. And I buy that very much. It looks like an A and an M to me as well, in the style of Alfred Roller or somebody from that generation. All right, I promise we'll do more on Alma in future. There are so many topics. We're just sort of skimming the surface these first few Mahler hours, and I feel that there's so much more that we have to offer, and we'll have to go back into in more detail as time goes on. But I have to wrap up the hour now. I'd like to thank everybody who participated today. And I would just like to note that I received no questions apparently over Facebook. So don't be shy about asking if there are questions you have. And of course, if there's anything you'd like to see in future editions of the Mahler Hour, don't hesitate to let us know. Write to us at info@mahlerfoundation.org. We're always willing to think about new programming in your interest. It's so wonderful to know that you're there from all around the world, and we want to be sure we represent as many of you and as many interests as possible within Mahler's universe. So with that, I will just give you my last sort of description of this as the future will unfold. The Mahler Hour, brought to you by Mahler Foundation and contributors around the world, is now a monthly streaming event that you can see on the first Tuesday of every month. The idea is to bring together individuals interested in the composer, the thinker, the humanist Gustav Mahler, as we explore not only his life and works, but also how his legacy still informs essential aspects of the human experience, and how we can turn that experience into a force for good in today's world. So we hope you will support us. Hope you will join us again next month. I want to thank especially Francisco Brizio, Vice Chairman of Mahler Foundation, for his technical support and all the incredible work behind the scenes, as well as Monica Anguiano, our executive coordinator, for doing so much to help and make this a reality. Join us again for the next Mahler Hour on October 6th. See you then. Bye-bye.